Hello, everyone. Welcome to AI Agents Hour.
What up?
My name's Shane, and with me, as always, is Abby. Today, we're going to be talking about a
Yes.
whole bunch of things. We're going to give some Mastra updates. We're going to talk to Richard from Naptha AI. We're going to talk with Sherwood. We're going to be going through a whole bunch of AI news. I thought it was going to be like a slow news day, and there's really not anything major, but there's a lot.
There's a lot
So,
of stuff.
just a lot of stuff. So, it's a huge list. I don't think there's anything revolutionary in here, but a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm excited.
I like, it's just there's not a lot of bangers, but just like a lot of movement.
Yeah. Well, how was your weekend, dude?
It's good. Back in Southern California visiting my family, so that's chill. Yeah, and it's been good. I'm here chilling and gonna come back to SF on Thursday for a meetup. There's a LLM ops meetup that I'll be going to.
Awesome.
Also, have
Well,
you looked at my background?
I know I was like, is that Ward? It
Yep.
is. Shout out to Ward.
Shout out to Ward. If
The-
you're watching this, you're on the show
yeah,
right now.
Ward's the memory. Dude, we're gonna go see Ward soon. I'm
We're gonna
psyched.
see Ward. Dude, I'm so stoked. It's nice. You haven't been to Belgium before, huh?
I have not been to Belgium, but I am excited. So maybe we should tell people what are we doing? Why are we going to be in Belgium? And talk a little bit about maybe how they could come hang out with us as well.
Yeah. So we are traveling as a group, all the founders as well. But then there are many of our homies in Europe coming as well. We are going to AI Engineer Paris. That's on the 23rd and 24th of September. We'll be in Paris and in Europe. I'll be there starting the 14th. Shane will be there roughly around the same time. And yeah, if you want to come meet us, we'll be probably throwing some type of happy hour in Paris. So just if you follow us on Twitter, we'll post it there. And then if you're around or you're coming for the conference, then meet up. We'll have our Mastra shirts on, so you'll know it's us.
Yeah, yeah. So please follow us, and hopefully we can get together and hang out. At least,
And
at
if you
least,
want to meet Ward, he'll definitely be there.
yeah. Ward will be there, and he'll have to put the farm aside for a few days. And
Yeah,
but yeah, there'll be a lot of people from the team there. So excited to one hang out with them. Also meet a bunch of other people in the space that we haven't seen. It's nice to get across the pond, so to speak, and
yeah,
meet some others, not just living in our SF bubble or US bubble.
yeah, yeah. I'm interested to see how the vibe of AI Engineer Paris is, because if it's mostly like European stuff, and if they don't watch the show, maybe they are not in the know. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. Yeah, last week, for those of you, we had a live in person. I was in SF, so we can maybe talk a little bit about some of the stuff we did there. We can maybe talk just a little bit about the big release last week and what's coming next. And then, yeah, we do have a first guest coming on in probably about 5 or 10 minutes, I would say.
Last week was really good in terms of like a founder week. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, we were busy. We didn't even get to the gym
Mhm.
once. That's
No,
how
we didn't
you.
do anything.
I mean, I don't know. And this is coming from someone like I am pretty religious about going to the gym, and we were so busy last week. I didn't even ask you.
Yeah.
Just like I think I mentioned it once, like, dude, we got to get to the gym, and then we totally were just too
Did
busy.
I remember seeing that text and I'm like, oh yeah, let me just finish what I'm doing. And then it was like 10 hours later. And I was like, oh, what time is it? Oh shit.
Yeah,
Last week was crazy release week. On Tuesday, we attempted to release our V5 compat with AI SDK. That didn't really go the way we wanted it on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we got it going. So we have support for ASDK v5 models. In this release, we introduced two new methods. One is stream vnext and generate vnext. We plan to deprecate the old generate and stream methods on agents on September 9th. That's the tentative plan. So there'll be like deprecation warnings going out. But stream and generate vnext has actually been, it was a lot of work, but it was actually really good in hindsight, because now we control the agentic loop via workflows under the hood, and there's a lot of opportunity for us to do more tracing, more attach our scores natively. Like, it kind of opened up a lot of stuff for us that we didn't necessarily know going in. So that's out in VNext now. It's in the latest Mastra versions. And if we're trying to hunt down all the issues with it, because we are trying to go, forward. So if you're using it, please report anything. That'd be great.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things we really tried to do, and one of the reasons it took us a little longer, is we wanted to make sure we provided as smooth of an upgrade path as possible.
Yeah.
So Mastra works with the AI SDK v4 and AI SDK v5. You should be able to transition between the two pretty seamlessly. There might be some edge cases, of course, which you should report,
Yeah.
but it provides hopefully an on-ramp to get there without having to do a full
Yeah.
breaking change.
Yeah. And we did a whole retro. I don't know if this is important to say, but we did a whole retro on are we like too risk averse or not? And we realized that like we're gonna try to move. We want to move quickly. We just want to break people because like it's like the worst feeling in the world being on the other end. And you're working on something and then everything gets broken and you're all pissed off and stuff. At least that's how I am. So I guess maybe that is the bias that we have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, no breaking changes unless it's well in advance, and it's we're not at a major
Communicated.
yet, so we could still
Yeah.
break things, but we try really hard not to.
Yeah. It's a good habit for an engineering team to build.
Yeah. In other news, we had an event last Wednesday at the YC office. You were kind of busy. You didn't get to attend the whole thing, but you did
No.
show up for some of it. But yeah, it was a great event. It's called Context Engineering. I think they actually released the videos today, I
Yeah.
believe. So on the Y Combinator YouTube,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe grab the link. We can drop that in. But if you want to see, Sam, our other co-founder here, wrote this book, which we always talk about. Get your version,
My
digital
travel
copy,
copy.
mastra.ai/book, to grab yours. But gave a talk on. I mean, there are a bunch of talks on context engineering. Dex from Human Layer was there. Jeff from WorkOS, and a few others, just talking about what is context engineering, tips and tricks for how to think about context engineering. So if you're interested in learning more about that, go to that thread. You can watch the videos. Sam's talk was really around how we used long mem eval to improve Mastra's agent memory, because that is in many cases, memory is just context engineering, right? Memory is a
Yeah.
feature of context engineering. So we talked about that. We have a blog post on that. We've talked about it here on the show, so I'm not going to spend too much time going into depth on that post. But I think it's a good primer if you are interested in trying to learn more about some tips and tricks, and if you're not familiar with context engineering, you've probably heard it called prompt engineering before, and now context engineering is the new term in town that everyone's using.
It's the new hype cycle is around context
Yeah,
engineering.
but
There was some.
I do think it makes more sense than prompt engineering. Prompt is very
Yeah.
specific. Context is at least a little more broad, covers more things. So
Yeah.
I think it's here to stay for a while. I think this term will stick around for a bit.
Totally. Especially if people are adopting. I know Dex has his like context engineering philosophies that he was sharing. We should get him on the show
Yeah,
to
Dex,
kind
if
of
you're
explain it.
listening, I really want to go deep in what you were talking about, because I believe it, but I don't believe it all the way.
Yeah.
Like, so
Something smells a little fishy. No, I was
it
kidding.
sounds too good to be true, but I want to see it. We should get him on the show, and then
Yeah.
have him, like, we should just like try it out. Like, show us a small example of how it works, of how he thinks about it. So for those, I would highly recommend anyone watching this, go check out Dex's talk. It was very good.
Super
It's
good.
in that Y Combinator thread, but he talks about the idea that, his big claims is he hasn't looked at code in 6 weeks. That was one of the big claims, because the team aligns on a spec, or like basically a research report and then a spec, and those things essentially get committed to your code base. So if you review that, you don't have to review every line of code. Now, I doubt he hasn't looked at any code. I don't believe that, but
That's the one that's like, ugh.
yeah, but I think his idea is that if you spend enough time iterating on the spec, then, and it's detailed enough, you can trust the code to implement the spec now, or the agent, your coding agent to implement the spec. The one analogy he used that I think did kind of hit home with me. If you're only committing, let's assume that agents, you could just trust them. They could do,
Yeah.
if you wrote the spec, they could write the spec exactly. And you could think of an agent like a compiler, right? That would be like in Java world, just committing your jar file to your repo, like the
Yeah.
actual compiled, bytecode rather than the spec that got you there. So I see some value in doing it. And I do think that as engineers, we should be looking at some of these different techniques because some of them are going to work long term. Maybe they don't completely
Yeah.
work today, but if you're trying it out, your team is adopting some of these new things and trying out and figuring out ways to become more efficient. That's typically a good thing.
Yeah, and it's typical that like we're in the part of this like cycle where you want to abstract. Like we've all been prompting for the last year, right? And all of us have different strategies, and we're comparing notes and stuff. But then we're almost getting to a point where some people just want abstraction on top of the prompts. Like I just want it to behave like how you prompted all that time without me having to know. And I think that's where like this will continue on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, should we bring on our first guest?
Yeah, let's do it.
So before we do, this is live. You might be watching this live. You might be checking out the podcast after on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other places that we are. You might be watching this on LinkedIn or X. But please go ahead and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube if you are not already subscribed. And if you want to give us a 5-star review, I think that's a good idea. Go to Spotify,
Great
go to
idea.
Apple Podcasts. If you want to give us a 4 or lower, you might want to find better things to do. That's all I ask. That you don't have to give us a review, but if it's a 5-star, please do, and we appreciate that, and it helps go a long way for others to find this. And with that, we're going to bring on Richard, and we're going to talk what is Naptha AI and just a little bit about his story. So, Richard,
Cool. Hey guys,
welcome.
hey Abby, nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Excited
Nice.
to be.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Ashwin from our team set this up and said that you'd be a very interesting person to talk to. So I did a little research and I'm definitely interested. But for those watching, can you give us just a quick little background?
A background about myself, or
Yeah,
Naptha in general?
just about you,
Okay.
and then we'll probably talk about what you're doing.
Yeah, so my background is in academia originally. I did a PhD and a couple of postdocs in machine learning. Worked as a machine learning engineer in big tech for a few years, always in generative AI. So working on things like digital avatars. Did a lot of like orchestration work for some of the pipelines. You can imagine with digital avatars, there's a lot of different models. You need, one for audio to text, one for lip sync, one for image to video, and kind of orchestrating all of these models together in a pipeline was a big thing. So I worked a lot with workflow orchestration tools and that sort of thing. Always wanted to start startups on the side. So I think Naptha is like my third startup at this point. It's the only one that's fundraised. So we've got the furthest. But yeah, we work on a bunch of different stuff. Honestly, we're just trying to find product market fit. But broadly, we're building products in the agent space. So we tried to, launch a MCP hosting product called Auto MCP. Then that became a super competitive space with for sale and Cloudflare and AWS moving in. So we decided to move away. We built a auth product to make it easier to connect agents to different data sources and integrations. And now we're working on a platform that makes agents work better with dev tools, dev tool libraries and platforms. So you can log into our SaaS app, deploy a streamable HTTP MCP server, and that gives you a small number of tools that just make agents work better with your libraries. So there's a few different things that agents don't do well. If you, add docs to cursor doc search, like add the Mastra docs and ask it to, generate some examples with Mastra, it might use outdated versions of the library. It might try to import deprecated functions. Mintlify is a bit better, but still not perfect. So one of the things we're working on is improved doc search as a tool. We also have tools for the platform API, tools for submitting customer support tickets, and actually inspired by Mastra, the MCP course that you put up on Hacker News, created a tool for doing these kind of guided installation workflows, or really any guide in the developer docs. On our platform, you can convert that into an interactive course, which can then be delivered through the code editor. So that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah,
That's dope.
That's really awesome. I think I felt like it even added more validation too. I think Anthropic released the learn mode of Claude Code, which is just a sign that I think we are onto something here, and I think that is a very good use case of MCP plus agents in general is just not just do the thing for me, but teach me how to do it, you know? So yeah, that's really awesome. So how does someone get access to something like this? Are you still in beta, or is it accessible to people?
Yeah,
Ultimately I want to see it, you know? So how do people that are watching this get to see it?
We just put a very basic landing page live. It's called wizardkit.ai. So if you go there, you can check out a demo video, which we did for the Next.js Getting Started guide. Yeah, we're currently trying to demo to a few big developer tool and platform companies to go into like a pilot program for like 2 to 3 months. And what we're trying to do with them is to show that we can increase activation and retention using these kind of in-editor guided walkthroughs.
This is the website, right?
This is it.
All right. Wizardkit.ai.
Yeah, we just
Very cool.
We just use it Lovable for the landing page, but the demo video is really what you want to see.
Play it.
Okay, we'll click through. We won't watch the whole thing.
Kyle, and I'm CTO here at Naptha. In this video, I'm going to go through an interactive agent-powered onboarding and installation experience to showcase what our solution has to offer. To get started, I've created a mock documentation page with an installation button. The installation process looks a little bit different for every MCP client, but for the purposes of this video, I'm using Cursor. So when a user clicks install, they will be linked into Cursor and prompted to approve the installation. Again, looks a little different for different clients, but out of the scope of this video. Also note that in this link, we have an optional tracking parameter ID here. So on the client side of your doc site, you can template in your user's Mixpanel, Google Analytics, or post-hog tracking ID just into that link in the button. This will let us track the user from your doc site to when they install the server, even before they authorize, and this can then help us determine if they convert later on down the funnel. So I'm going to go ahead and click install. Once that's done, the user will be taken through an OAuth authorization flow as soon as they click login. For this demo, I'm using a branded version, but we are capable and happy to proxy to your authorization server so that your end users see your branded experience instead of ours. Once the user has completed authorization, they'll be bounced back into Cursor, and the service tools will be enabled. The great thing about this is that once the user completes this, A, they've been de-anonymized, and B, if we're proxying your authorization server, they've now signed up for your platform, if they haven't already. And we'll go through an example of how de-anonymization works in the dashboard later. Once the user's connected, all they have to do is tell the agent to start the walkthrough. It's worth noting that we can have multiple walkthroughs attached to a single MCP server, and since it's remote, you can modify and update packages on the fly without having to redistribute packages. If there are multiple walkthroughs, the agent can help the user pick which one is most aligned with what they're looking for, whether that's a walkthrough, an interactive course, an agentic installer wizard, or something else. From there, it's just an iterative step-based approach. Right now, it's configured to ask the user for feedback and to confirm that they're ready to move on with each step, since this one's structured like a course, but we can also have a more kind of hands-off semantic installer where the agent is given instructions to dig through the user's codebase, and then, for example, to install a library or integrate an SDK or instrument an application. So we can see here that it's going through the beginning of the Getting Started guide. It checks the system compatibility automatically, it runs a bunch of commands, it'll install the Next.js app, and guide the user step-by-step in the editor as a kind of human in the loop to confirm various actions, including skeletoning the project, writing code, guiding and educating the user, and teaching them how the project's organized. So the great thing about having all this in the editor, compared to toggling back and forth between the editor and a docs page, is that there's a lot less friction, less context switching. Agents are also really good at following these instructions, so when a particular walkthrough is really kind of command and edit heavy, agents tend to follow the instructions much more consistently than humans do. The user also just has to do less to get up and running. It's less tedious, it's faster, there's less friction, all really important things for onboarding new users into a solution. So we can see here that it went ahead and skeletoned everything out. It's just kind of cruising.
Okay, let's pause there.
Awesome. Yeah, the next part is like the dashboard. I don't know if you want to show like a walkthrough manager or something at some point.
How do I get, so right, maybe go to here.
So this is where we would track the metrics, for example, you know, how much of the course they completed and that sort of thing. And then if you go on a bit later, you can see the walkthrough manager as well. Yeah, maybe try play. I think this is where you can see all of the users that have interacted with your MCP server. Yeah, this is the walkthrough.
Reordered and so forth. And so we have a whole editor for creating your different walkthroughs on user management. So as I noted, we're able to track an anonymous user from your doc site to when they install the MCP server, even before they authorize, if you use that optional tracking parameter that I showed you at the beginning of this video. And then once that user authorizes, they're de-anonymized, and you get all this information about the user, right? So this is an example of just an anonymous user. You know, we can see some sessions, you know, their anonymous user ID. Once that user authorizes, you know, we get their email address, their name, sometimes their profile photo. And so, you know, we can get you all this. Agent is kind of prompt inject, do it. This is another great way to get more insight into your funnel, more data on your users.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
For the walkthrough manager, we basically take your docs and then we have semi-automated the conversion to interactive walkthrough. So you can, you know, in theory, take any guide in your docs, like just put it into our platform and it will create this interactive in-editor guided walkthrough.
Very cool.
This definitely needs to exist, because I can just tell you from when we built the course that it was, you know, we kind of just hard coded everything, which is what you do the first time you build something, right? You just kind of hard code it, and it works for us because, you know, we figured it out, we got it working. It works pretty well. Like, it could probably work better, right? There are techniques and tips because you're kind of getting the coding agent to do what it's not necessarily supposed to do or not intended to do, but you can kind of guide it in the right direction. but I am certainly curious how it all works under the hood, of course, but also interested in like trying it out on some little things because I think something like this. I actually saw someone else tweeted at me today,
Yeah, the
and
guy from CMU.
yeah, someone from CMU has built something just for sounds like things he was workshops he was running locally at CMU maybe or something. So I think this idea
Yeah.
is going to take off.
I think there's going to be a bunch of interesting use cases for it. Like another one is we just released like Stackbench, which is we're going to open source it. It's a benchmark for how well agents use different libraries. And, we want to test like cursor coding agents, for example, and to be able to like automate the tests with cursor coding agents in the editor, something like an in-editor workflow or automation tool is going to be a super useful thing. So we can basically use these in-editor courses to like test these coding agents across like a bunch of benchmarks in this deterministic manner, which is going to be super cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the data on that. So right now, though, like the users have to still produce great content, though, for this to be important, right? Because it's still like a content and code, like it's still very important to the process. Are there a lot of people well, we've talked to people, a lot of people's content and docs are not in any good format to do education. So are people, they're gonna have to do some transformation first, or like how's that going, I guess?
We kind of assume you already have the docs, and then we, convert that into an in-editor course. I know there's like a bunch of people trying to auto-generate docs from code and even from like Slack messages in team channels and that sort of thing. So that's not a problem that we're trying to solve. But yeah, hopefully someone else helps us out with that.
Yeah, for sure. So do you have any users yet?
No is the answer. We're still in like private beta, and we're in the late state. Like we're trying to close a few pilot customers, basically like 5 to 10 that we can, run this live on their docs for 2 to 3 months and just demonstrate this increase in activation and retention. So, but hopefully we'll close our first one soon.
Yeah.
Well, nice.
Yeah. If you're out there and you have some docs and you would want to try to create an MCP course from them or build an MCP doc server, it sounds like you're the person to reach out to. Did you find? So I know you've obviously been building this. I know when I was building the MCP course, I found it was kind of tricky to get the right amount of content because you look like in your walkthrough you kind of had steps, right? Did you find have you learned anything about like how much content should go in each lesson or step of a walkthrough? Because I know for us it was significantly less than I wanted it to be. I wanted to just give it like a whole bunch of steps and say like, you're the agent, you figure it out. But I found the best results when I was, would limit it down to, I think I basically set like a roughly hard rule. Like if my markdown file is more than 100 lines, I'm trying to do too much and the agent's probably going to fail. But that was just me playing around and prompting and seeing what worked. I'm curious if you found, what has worked best for you all. Are you still figuring that out?
Yeah, I think we're still figuring that out. I mean, it's kind of like semi-automatic, as I said, which means there's a lot of like human kind of fine tuning to like make sure that the length of each step is works and that sort of thing. So yeah, we're playing around with this, and it's like it's an interesting question of like how deterministic should your workflow be versus like how much autonomy should you give to the coding agent, and finding that balance I think is going to take a little bit of study.
Yeah, and the thing that is challenging is every agent is slightly different in how well it handles the different amounts of context. So I think that's why you having the benchmarks or whatever, being able to run it against multiple different agents could be really useful to say, if you want an agent to teach you, here's the ones here are the best teachers. It's almost like these are the best professors of what, and I suppose it could vary based on the topic or the content as well a little bit, but overall it would be nice to have some kind of system to say, these are the best ones to use if you want to actually learn something.
One of the things I want to add to our benchmark is tasks for how well agents install things. So I've done a bit of research into this, and there's like, a few different, data sets for, agents setting up an environment and that sort of thing. But again, it's like super underexplored. So yeah, hopefully on Stackbench, we can have like all of the different coding agents and like see how well they do all of the different installation tasks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we wish we could have benchmarked a little bit because we had so many issues that were not even issues with the course. It was just like, hey, this doesn't work in VS Code properly, or the agent did something different in Cursor versus Windsurf when it was executing this part of the lesson plan. And all that stuff, like the content's the same, like nothing changed except for the editor you're using. And it sucks for those users too, because like they could have had a good experience, but they didn't, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know.
totally. It's like really underexplored. Like, you know, given that so many of developers are using coding agents these days, you'd think that developer tool libraries and platforms would know better about how coding agents use their library or use their API or, you know, install their packages and that sort of thing. But no one has really started thinking about it yet. And I think this is going to become much more important. You know, we're just kind of getting to the stage where people are starting to think about geo, or whatever. Like, how likely is a coding agent to recommend, you know, a certain observability tool versus another? I think these are all going to be things that developer-focused companies are going to care more about, and they're also going to care about how well coding agents use their libraries.
Yeah, totally. You guys should share the data when you get it. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it on the show.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah. Anything else that you've been working on or you want to share? What else should people know about you in Naptha?
Yeah, I guess like Stackbench is kind of like where we're trying to benchmark a lot of the coding agents. So check that out. That's at stackbench.ai. It's currently a SaaS app, but we're going to open source and, you know, give people the ability to run it locally. Maybe this week, but definitely by next week. And you'll be able to test it with your Cursor agents and that sort of thing. That actually got to the front page of Hacker News last week when we put it out there. So check that out. Yeah. Also, yeah, just check out WizardKit and reach out if, you know, you want to try it out, or if you're a developer-focused company that like is interested in using it. But yeah, apart from that, like we're trying to use Mastra for a few things in our backend as well. So for our doc search tool, we're working on using Mastra. It's just a simple like contextual retrieval pipeline, but yeah, Mastra saves us a lot of time so that we don't have to like implement custom chunking logic and all this sort of stuff. And it would be really cool to use Mastra to do the automatic course generation at some point in future.
Would be great.
Yeah.
Would be great. Help us with our installs, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, maybe we can benchmark how well coding agents use Mastra too and let you know.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I think that is one of the challenges, right, of a dev tools company is ensuring that people can actually use your tool. I know that with just in general, if people can't use your tool effectively, like how many times, Abhi, have you and I joked about just Tailwind and trying to get an editor to write the right version of Tailwind? It's like versioning so hard, and keep making sure that it's using the same version as what's in your project is hard. And there's other like Context 7s and MCP server that has a lot of docs, and it's good that it exists, but I also I found limited value in it because it's kind of generalized for everything. And I've seems like more specific docs would perform better, right? You know, more specific MCP targeted at the specific tool you want to have docs about. Of course, then the question is like, it has to be easier to install and add these MCPs, or maybe auto discover the ones that you should have for your project. There's a whole bunch of things that I think you could do to make it easier to kind of add these things. When every dev tools company has one, then maybe it becomes a little more easy to just find and turn them on. Almost like a really good marketplace of discoverability for finding these tools.
Yeah, and everything is anecdotal at the moment. Like, you know, I ask people how well Cursor Doc Search works versus Mintlify, and they're kind of like, oh, well, Mintlify kind of works better. And then people bring up Context 7 and like, yeah, we just need to benchmark these things like across lots of different coding agents and see how they work and see the numbers. And then we can figure out how to improve it.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
All right, Richard. So the best place to find you, besides the website you shared, WizardKit.
Yeah, check out wizardkit.ai, check out stackbench.ai. We do have a main website, naptha.ai, which we're updating. As I mentioned, we're like building a lot of different products and launching landing pages for them. So our main website has been out of date, but it should be updated by the end of the day. So you can check out naptha.ai as well. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm richard@naptha.ai.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, we'll definitely bring you on again
Yeah.
once you get those benchmarks out, we'd love to chat through them once you get some real data that we can dig into, because I know that'd be super useful to just be able to look and compare across multiple different coding agents.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll maybe I can share some results about like what's missing in the Mastra docs or what's not working well in this.
That'd be super cool.
Come on and roast us. We like that.
Exactly. Here's the
We're here
report.
for the roast.
Here's your grade. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Richard. Yeah, it was great chatting with you, and for everyone else, go check their stuff out.
Thanks, guys.
Check it
See
out.
you, Richard.
See ya.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
All right, dude.
Dude, that was interesting.
Yeah. More. That's kind of funny because it's the second time now that someone's building platforms around this idea of, a course as an MCP, and obviously there's more to it than just that, but that of course is interesting to me because I spent a lot of time on that damn course.
Yeah, we did for our tenant, and they have like a single or multi-tenant. That's what you just know. We're on the right direction though, so that's
I mean, why not? I'm going to give a plug for the course because, we have the captive audience. If you haven't checked it out, go to mastra.ai/course. We've had 1,000 people plus sign up already, which is cool. I have over 1,000 people that have gone through the course. So more should do it and provide feedback and tell us how we can make it better, because I know there's a lot more we could be adding to it. Well, should we bring on another friend?
Let's do it.
All right. So I feel like a lot of people might know if they're in the AI space in SF. I feel like you know Sherwood, but for those that don't, they get to meet him.
Welcome.
What's up? Good to see you guys.
How's it going, dude?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sad. I was in SF last week and I didn't get to see you.
We keep missing each other, dude.
Yeah, so it's like I send you a text and you're like, "How's this week?" And I'm like, "Not there that week." Maybe if I just lived there, we'd hang out more. But
no, you're like not very available. Sam's not very available, and then obviously super available. He's like, "Hey, what's up?"
One of the agent boys.
He's one of the agent boys.
One of the agent boys, dude.
Yeah, I was out of town this weekend for a wedding, so I wasn't able to link up with Avi. But we're overdue for a drink. So
yeah, definitely. So let's get into like the journey, dude, because I don't know if you ever talked publicly, well, obviously in private, but like for the audience and stuff, like tell us about your founding journey thus far.
For sure. Actually sort of went viral recently for a tweet related to YC. So I feel like a lot of people might be interested in hearing the story or me going into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just to provide a little bit more context, I studied history undergrad and I'm from North Carolina. And I found my way into tech and startups by doing a web development bootcamp during college. So it was like 2014. Web development bootcamps were pretty new. I found this bootcamp in a Forbes article, like needed something to do over the summer. And so I like packed up for San Francisco and spent 3 months in San Francisco hanging out with people who were just like learning to do web development. And at that time it was a Rails bootcamp. I remember, I mean, this will give some perspective, and your audience is obviously super interested in TypeScript and JavaScript. Node came out that summer, where I feel like Node was like the hot new technology in summer of 2014, and like the idea of writing JavaScript on the server side was like exciting and new. So from there, it basically didn't look back. I knew it was like one of those moments where you're like, I'm not really sure like where I want to go with my life, and then suddenly you find something that just like perfectly resonates with your interests and your skills. And so I basically decided I wanted to go into tech and tech startups and be an engineer at a venture-backed tech startup, and ultimately to start my own. And that summer, a lot of people were reading Hacker News and talking about YCs. Some folks spun out of the program and started companies. Other folks applied to YC, and a handful of them got in. And so there's a lot of excitement around that community in particular. So it had been my dream for a long time to do a YC venture-backed tech startup. But I made my way back to San Francisco after graduation and ended up working at Crunchbase, and then joining Brex relatively early. I think it was the like 70th employee at Brex, and one of the first couple of infrastructure engineers there. And then while at Brex, my my friend who was on the front end engineering team, he and I relocated to New York to help start Brex's New York office. And this was in maybe October of 2019. So it was like very poorly timed. We were all excited because the leadership team was moving out to, or the leadership team had like bought a condo in New York, and it really seemed like there was going to be kind of a center of gravity shift. And at the time, I was dating someone who had been working with Stripe, and her team had like started another Stripe office in a different city. I was like, wow, this is a really cool idea, like to be a part of the landing team for this new office. So we moved out there in late 2019. The office was open for like 3 or 4 months before COVID shut it down. And then we found ourselves kind of
Hey.
stuck in New York with Elise. And my co-founder Justin and I worked remotely for Brex for about 1.5 years from New York before taking the plunge and applying to YC. And I think that's kind of where things get interesting in terms of our entrepreneurship story. But that's the setup.
That's a good setup, dude. Did you like New York during COVID? It was super boring.
I had a good experience. I think a lot of people had a pretty bad experience. Immediately following COVID, all of the San Franciscans like moved out to New York. So I guess in a way I was like at the beginning of that migration, or even like a year or two before the migration. I mean, I lived with like my best friend and like my colleague and ultimately my co-founder. So that was a lot of fun. And we had like a small group of COVID pod that would hang out. And that, we ended up making a lot of like good, close relationships in New York, which is, I think, actually not that normal for a New York experience. You typically go to New York and you like meet a ton of people, but maybe not everyone is like you're super close with. In my case, I got to meet like maybe 5 or 10 people that I ended up being very close with and are good friends to this day. But the New York and San Francisco tech scenes are very different. And Justin and I ended up building a tech startup for 3.5 years in New York. And it was a much more isolating experience than it is doing in San Francisco.
And was your YC, I guess we can go into YC, but you did remote YC?
Yeah, I think the first remote batch was winter 2020 or 2021. And then we were summer 2021. So we were fully remote. And I actually, that's a huge bummer, to be honest. Like you miss out on a lot of what's great about YC. It's that in-person relationship building and the energy I feel like that you get from being in the same room with all these other companies, and the camaraderie associated with it. In-person demo day, which I think is super exciting. And that's like a huge part of the experience. We are obviously part of the YC community. We get access to Bookface. We make friends with people like you. But that's like a pretty irreplaceable experience. So unfortunately we didn't get that.
Dang.
Did an entire
how'd you stay
fundraise
motivated?
over Zoom.
Yeah. I will say though, I think that transition, the fundraising over Zoom, I don't think actually left, because I still think that most investor meetings now are still fundraised over Zoom.
Yeah.
At least that was our experience. And I think it's just the scaling laws make that easier. But of course, there's certain situations where you get in person with some VCs, but I think it's, so I don't know if that ever went away after COVID. I think that probably started it. And then it just, maybe investors are like, I can just get through way more meetings and make decisions faster. So they prefer it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely still here. I personally don't like to pitch over Zoom. And I feel like there's, when you are pitching, you're volunteering your time, you're sharing your vision. You're releasing information about which is effectively confidential information about your company. So there's a little bit of there's a contract. There's an informal contract that you and the investor, I think, are engaging in when you guys take that meeting. And I think that the odds are not really in the favor of the founder when they do that virtually. You could have the investor using a note taker, or the investor is just taking as many meetings as possible, trying to gather information, and it's just a lot less fun to, you're your founder who should be focusing on building the company, and you have to spend 30 minutes of the day interrupting flow to beg for money over a video call. The least you can do is buy me coffee. Let's go to the South Park Blue Bottle or something. So I much prefer pitching in person. I think it's a good thing that it's you can do it remotely, because I think it opens up venture fundraising for people who are not based in San Francisco or New York. That's just my
I
take.
think the current batch is fundraising right now. I think this is the time that they're fundraising, and I got some plenty of them their whole calendars are booked from morning to 15 hours or something. And most of these investors are probably just poking for information. They are interested in what's going on in the YC batch and stuff. We had similar situations with all these meetings too. Not most of them, I guess for us, most of them worked out. But for the other ones, there were definitely some useless ones in there for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, YC definitely seems to have the opinion that the best thing for founders. I mean, there's a whole separate question about whether you think YC has founders' best interests at heart. We'll put that to the side. But I think that what they think is best for founders is this fundraise during a very compressed time frame, create artificial scarcity, book as many meetings as possible. It's a little bit of a numbers game. You need to generate hype. And I mean, that obviously YC companies do really well and typically raise at a premium. So there's definitely something there. I really want to know and like my investors. In some cases, you get to know them after they've already committed, and that's the relationship building part. But in some cases, you can get to know them before. And I'm working on my second company now, actually, and one of the main investors is someone that I knew from my first company. So it just goes to show that those relationships compound.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So keep telling us the journey. So you're in New York. You did remote YC. We're caught up to what, 2021
so
now?
This
maybe?
is summer 21. So we're in New York. And this is in many ways a cautionary tale. So I don't think your audience should, if anyone's interested in getting into YC and doing a venture-backed tech startup, which I imagine a lot of people are, hopefully this will help you. You can take the positive things away and also steer clear of some pitfalls. In my case, Justin and I were working at Brex, and Justin had done a startup before that had been bootstrapped, so he kind of already had a little entrepreneurship streak. And I knew that I'd had this vision of doing a YC venture-backed tech startup since undergrad. So we knew what he wanted to do something and loved working together. We're both technical from Brex. It makes sense that we would be a great co-founding pair. I think you guys have a similar story from Netlify. And at the time, I was kicking around a couple of ideas. We were interested in fintech because Brex was obviously a fintech company. We thought we had this idea about verticalized fintech, in the, all of the neobanks had been done, like Chime, and there's a billion of these neobanks, and there was the HR and payroll startups, and then there's embedding banking, and there's stuff like Checker, these sort of fintech adjacent services via API. So it felt like the first wave of fintech was kind of over, and there was going to be this next wave, which might be verticalized fintech SaaS platforms or offerings. So you can imagine banking for real estate, or banking and expense management for healthcare, or for construction, et cetera. So in our case, my dad growing up was an orthopedic surgeon. So I was like, let's do banking / billing, something fintechy for healthcare. This is my special angle, is this access that I have to I can go interview the CFO of the hospital or talk to the staff in the billing department. So that was the basic premise. We kind of intellectualized our way into what felt like a good business idea. It was kind of very much like an MBA case study approach to entrepreneurship. And then the YC deadline was approaching, and I think we probably saw one of these tweets or emails about the deadline being 48 hours away. And Justin and I were like, screw it, let's apply and see what happens. We won't get in because of course we haven't worked on this idea for very long, and we'll just learn about the application process, harden the idea a little bit, and maybe get an interview, and then we'll apply again in the fall with something more serious. But that's not what happened. We got an invitation to interview. We did the interview. Holy shit! We actually did 2 interviews. We got invited for a second interview, and I don't know if that's more common these days. And I remember at the second interview, both of Justin and I were still working at Brex, and our partner was Dalton, who's now no longer with YC. he was at the end of this interview, like we had prepared for it, like, oh, okay, they're gonna ask all these follow-up questions about like the product and like the business and go to market, blah, blah, blah. And Dalton was just like, I just don't believe you guys. Like, I just don't believe you guys want to do this. And we were like, what? Like we had spent like a week like hammering home like all this other aspects of the business. And I think we basically just begged. We were like, we want to do this startup. We want to do it together. We're asking for your permission to do this. Like, if you admit us, we will leave Brex today. And that's what happened.
Nice.
And I actually think that's like a useful lesson for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of times the YCs of the world, the early stage startup accelerators and VCs just want to see conviction and commitment. They care a little bit less about like the idea itself and more about like the fact that you are totally committed to doing this because they're really betting on you.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of stories where the first idea isn't always the one that sticks, right? I think that's very common. You know, you can look at Avi, our story as well, right? It's like the first idea isn't always what sticks. I think, but having conviction and working on something hard together over a long period of time, and then actually trying to build something useful, then you can often find that.
Yeah,
it's almost they're more investing in like us, I guess. So it's not like they knew dev tools and shit. Like they're like, oh, these guys, it sounds right, maybe, and then they went and it worked out.
Well,
right?
coherence of your story is so important. Like the story around Mastra makes sense. Like we don't have language agnostic like HTTP servers.
Yeah.
We have Express, and then we have whatever the Python world has. I don't care about that. Like that's not how, like, it would make sense that that's not how agents plays out as well. And then like who better to build the TypeScript agent framework than like the guys who built Netlify? Like that coherence of that story is just like so powerful. And I think that investors just want to like hear that.
Yeah, I think the story where we, Gatsby to Netlify to now is a really good transition for. I think it landed really well.
Yeah. Like narrative is such a big part of it as a founder. Like even if you're like, sometimes we have to tell stories to each other to convince us like we need to go in a certain direction. It's all about how how that story comes across that then resonates with us. I don't know. Like a lot of founders are really bad at telling the story, and maybe because it's not something that truly can be done in 2 sentences. Maybe that's the premise, but then the actual story is probably what people are really interested in. So they don't train that.
Yeah. What did Mark Twain say? He said like, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
I'm not endorsing lying to investors, to be clear, but like a lot of times the twists and turns are really interesting when you kind of dig into it, and like they're interesting to you and it's part of your story. But like the main beats are like Gatsby, Netlify, there needs to be a TypeScript agent framework. We're the team. Full stop. And that's just learning how to tell that story and learning what that story is for you, I think is a good skill for founders.
So then for this medical fintech for medical thing, like what was the story, and did you pivot or you went through with it all the way?
Yeah, no. So we worked on OpKit for about 3.5 years, which is a long time. I think longer than most sort of seed stage startups. I credit that to probably my relationship with my co-founder, Justin. I mean, we're still best friends to this day. We enjoyed working together. We felt like we were learning at every step along the way. We felt like we were making progress. And so we were always hopeful at every step. And then when we decided that this was probably not the best thing for us to work on together, like we felt like we had explored all of the idea spaces and kind of gotten a sense for whether we were the right people to be building in healthcare, whether we were excited about it and passionate about it. We felt like that wasn't true. We chose together to pivot the company to an acqui-hire search, and that's what led us to 11x and has been a good launch pad. But at OpKit, we started off building medical billing software, and this was pre-LLM. I mean, LLMs existed, but they hadn't gone mainstream. I think that launch of GPT 3.5 was like November 2022, in ChatGPT. So we were like a full year and a half before that when we were working on this, maybe 2 years before that. And it made a lot of sense. Like this was like very similar to kind of like the banking and expense management products that we had built at Brex. Like we had built a card swipe product, and we built Brex Cash, their business bank product. And that's very similar to when you like go to a doctor's office and you like swipe your insurance card, and it tells you what your benefits are, what your copay is going to be, and then the doctor's offices collects that amount. Along the way, we like became subject matter experts in medical billing and electronic transactions within healthcare. It is a horrible, horrible, arcane world where you're working with like SFTP polling. They like don't even have like HTTPIs.
The
and
APIs of like some of those medical technology companies are so bad, or non-existent, right? It's like CSV exports
Non-existent.
or SFTP, pull, like you got to pull files from some SFTP server. Yeah, I have a little bit of experience doing that, and it's terrible.
Yeah, so technology was hard. I mean, the regulatory and compliance dimension was hard. I mean, we were HIPAA and SOC 2 Type 2 from like demo day onwards. That was very expensive, and it slows things down because every client wants to know if you're compliant.
Yeah.
The flow of funds in healthcare is quite complicated. Like it's a little bit unclear like who gets paid by who. A lot of times like the incentives are out of whack, and so like you would think that like this product would make sense, but in fact it doesn't make sense because this party has this incentive which makes them not want this thing to work.
Yeah.
So we got like a master's in healthcare finance or like public health over 3.5 years. We built basically 3 different businesses. First was this medical billing startup. Then we pivoted to focus exclusively on electronic eligibility, which is that figuring out whether you have benefits for this procedure and whether you're in or out of network, which is a really difficult problem. This is when digital health was really exploding. So we were working with a lot of these like online telehealth companies during the COVID era. And then in order to make this eligibility product work, we had built up a call center of healthcare call center in the Philippines. We had like 10 people in the Philippines who were calling insurance companies full time and loading in the information that we couldn't get electronically. And then LLMs happens. At first, it's very obvious to us, like we're going to be able to use LLMs for like quality assurance. So we can say, did this agent perform the call well? Did they adhere to the script? And then we used LLMs for data entry. We automated the part of their role where they like would extract information from the call and like type it into our system. And we built structured outputs before structured outputs existed for this. Then we built a vertical voice agent that could actually complete parts of the call in its entirety. And I think we were very early in voice. We use this kind of 3-step approach that's become pretty common. The transcription, and then the inference step, and then there's the speech synthesis step. We were very early users of 11 Labs and DeepGram. We worked closely with DeepGram team to figure out things like VAD and endpointing. FOPI was kind of new at the time. And I think that like voice is like still pretty much unsolved. It's getting better, but pretty unsolved. And that was the product that I think we had like the most conviction in, the most promise, and most traction. So we had like a year left to sprint at that pivot. Built a pretty good product and brought it to market. I think that the technology was just not quite there when we were a little too early, and maybe had spent too much of our pre-seed round at that stage. So it felt like, ironically, it might have been better for us to shut down and restart and pitch this as a new company and a new idea. I think we would have had more success, but we had already kind of decided that we were not the right people to be building agents in healthcare. That wasn't a passion of ours. So we started to transition to moving to 11x.
Awesome. Yeah. How was so you were at 11x for quite a while, and you've recently moved to start something new. So I don't know if you want to talk about 11x, you want to talk about what's new. We can go either direction with it, but definitely want to hear what you're working on now.
I think what's 11x story sort of informs like what I'm working on now. So maybe I can tell a little bit about that. 11x, for people who don't know, is an AI sales tech company. And I worked there from September of last year until end of May this year. So like 9 or 10 months. And my team basically came in and built 11x's AI SDR product, which is sales development representative, from scratch. Like Justin and I created the repo, pushed the first commits, all the way to doing like 50,000 emails generated by AI a day. And I don't know like how you guys will feel about this. But I think we are or were the largest deployment on LangGraph's cloud product. And in the process of this, I remember thinking like, I mean, the LangGraph TypeScript SDK has come a long ways. I remember being like, this is so hard. There's going to be a TypeScript specific agent framework. Like it doesn't need to be this hard. And then Mastra came along, and I think actually that's how I got connected to you guys, because I was like, this is exactly what I think should exist. And while at 11x building Alice, which is the name of the SDR, I felt like I'm building a futuristic product using agents. I'm using agents to build it. Like I'm using Cursor. Replit was kind of new. But all of the rest of my stack is very traditional. The way that I debug issues is very much the same as it was like 5, even 10 years ago. Like I'm using Datadog. I'm getting a bug report from like someone in Slack. Maybe it has like an organization ID or a link or a Loom. A Loom would be crazy. Or a stack trace or something like that. And then I just go splunking in these like legacy observability tools, sometimes for hours, to figure out like what actually happened. And it felt very like the contrast was extremely stark. I was kind of surprised actually, because I'd started the observability team at Brex, and I remember all of these technologies from when I was at Brex. I was like, I remember Prometheus. Like I've debugged, or I've like set up Grafana. I've set up Datadog. I've done distributed tracing. I've done instrumentation for like microservices architectures before. Like I know all of this. I built logging pipelines, and I'd expected it to be different. And it was basically the same. And now like all of my time was spent on debugging. Like 10% of my time, it used to be kind of like 50-50 like coding and debugging. Now it was like 90% debugging, 10% coding, because I'm so much more productive at coding. I can ship things faster, but then I'm basically as productive as as I've always been when it comes to fixing issues in prod. And so I just became obsessed with this idea of building an agentic observability platform, like something that makes developers 10 times better at fixing production, using the agents that I had gotten to build expertise in through building Alice, and creating a platform that's like built for humans and has features that are only possible through agents, but also built for agents. Like, what does it look like when the primary user of these observability tools is not actually like Shane and Abhi and Sherwood, but like the Cursor agent. And so agent experience is a component of that too. So that's kind of leads me to where I am today. I'm just in the very early stages of working on an agentic observability platform.
Dude, that's sick. What's it called? Are you allowed to say?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm holding off on it, but we're in stealth right now. I'm really excited about branding and marketing. I think like there's a lot of alpha there, and we're gonna have a really fun and cool brand. I think it's gonna feel very relevant, and I'm super excited to share it with people. I'll probably be sharing. I think we'll probably do a public launch in Q1 or Q2 of next year, but there will be a closed beta in the next month or two.
There's a lot of, so we talked to a lot of agent teams or AI engineering people, and the things that they're wanting, or at least thinking that they want, is like they want to get to they want to get to incident related things faster, without a lot of like the buildup of like having to search and read shit or understand stuff, write run books. Like no one wants to write run books anymore. They think that like, why do I have to write a run book? Shouldn't the agent just escalate things? But then it's kind of hard to pull that stuff up because the data sources are like one in legacy systems or all over the place. Like, have y'all like how are you going to deal with that challenge? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a bifurcation in observability AI startups right now, and most startups are building what I call an AI SRE, or an AI site reliability engineer. And an SRE like a role that exists in big tech and like Google. I think Google's probably famous for inventing this role. And they're responsible for like owning these observability systems and also using them to help people figure out what's breaking and to resolve and mitigate those issues. I think that the SRE role is obsolete and is going away. The idea that like every developer, or that we need certain developers who are experts in like understanding how production systems are behaving and fixing them, is kind of silly. Certainly, like as vibe coding plays out, like more and more, basically everyone's going to be a product engineer. Like I was a former infrastructure engineer. I don't think we need infrastructure engineers. Like does like those feel like vestiges of the cloud era, which is we are in the AI era today. The AI SRE companies are building these agents that sit on top of lots of different tools and kind of correlate information and pull information from all different existing systems, often legacy systems, to help you understand like what might be happening in production. And that's great. It works well like at an organization that has a bunch of legacy systems that they can't rip out. But the next generation of companies is not going to like have all of these legacy systems. Like we don't need something that like spiders across a bunch of different tools. Like we just need like your observability platform should be agentic to begin with. And so like one of the things that I think that's differentiated about my vision is that we are building ingestion and storage for your telemetry. So we're going full stack. And I think that I haven't seen any other company that wants to do that. I also think that unlocks a lot of pretty exciting possibilities in terms of like what our agent can do relative to other agents in the same space. And there's even some cool things you could do at like the storage and ingestion layers to cut costs.
Last week we had some people on the show from Cedar OS, and they use this word in like a lot of their, well, the way they were talking to us is like, this is AI native applications. So would you consider this that part of that kind of group of products that are emerging, that these are built for AI and like, designed for that?
Yeah, I would. I think that AI represents enough of a paradigm shift that we're going to see tools that are like a whole new set of tools that are AI native. Like an example of this is Cursor, right? Like sometimes like enough of the initial assumptions change that you just need to restart. And like, what are those assumptions? Like the new assumptions are like it's not just humans who are using it; it's also agents. There are features that are possible through like you can deploy LLMs to create like these chat-based interfaces or generative UI or non-deterministic things or do anomaly detection. These are like pretty fundamental shifts in what's possible and what the conditions are for the next, I would call it the next like 10 or 20 years of software. So I don't think that you could very easily take a company like a Datadog, which is built based on a different set of assumptions and just like suddenly magically make it AI native. I think that we're going to have new platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is, those other tools are going to try, right? They're going to add AI features to an existing product set. And then at the same time, there will be companies that try to be more AI focused from the beginning, trying to reimagine if we didn't have those previous preconceived notions of what this platform actually should be or what this tool should do, how would we build it from the ground up? And I think that you've seen many examples where, sometimes it can work where the old players add new features, but once you have a vast product set, it's actually kind of hard to implement new features. It's sometimes easier. It's why sometimes as engineers, we often want to just rewrite everything, because it's like, if we could just start over, we could do it way better than we could have done the first time. But you can't do that if you're a company with, thousands or tens of thousands or, potentially more users using your product every day. So I do think there's like this friction of, it's actually hard to implement a new feature into an existing product versus thinking of something from the ground up, especially when there's paradigm shifts like what AI has kind of done to, all kinds of products, not just observability.
Yeah, I think there's basically never been a better time to start a software company, because all of the, like, everything's up in the air again, everything's fair game. It's just because the conditions have changed so dramatically from where we were like just a couple of years ago, that like if you thought like we were like in game and everyone had sort of staked out like and won these different markets, that is no longer the case. And so that alone, I think, is like worth betting the next 5-10 years of your career on, is the fact that this is like a big enough paradigm shift that the pieces are being shuffled. Yeah, I want to be part of the shuffle.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The deck is definitely getting reshuffled a bit, and there's a lot of opportunity when that happens.
The tricky thing about reimagining shit, though, and just like us, because I guess we were trying to reimagine LangChain or whatever, so maybe we had prior art. But let's say if for your case, there's not much prior art, doesn't that? I'm just worried about like how do you get adoption on something that's so brand new in the paradigm? Do you have like any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that. I mean, there is prior art. I mean, observability has existed for a long time. Like observability as a concept kind of emerged in the 2010s as a response to like cloud, microservices, containerization. Like, and then we had a whole set of tools that were kind of thought from like the ground up. Like you could actually argue that that was like a paradigm shift that necessitated something like Datadog. It's like a cloud native observability platform that has the big innovation there was distributed tracing, because now all of our architectures are containerized, and that's like no longer true. we don't all build software on Kubernetes and Docker anymore. But there were like there's a lot of first principles thinking that happened during that era, about like, what are the 3 pillars of observability? What's the role of a SRE? Like how DevOps should function within an organization. And so that's all exists as a reference point. And I think people, like developers, understand what observability is today, and I think they also probably have good reference points for like the ways in which tool chains are changing because of AI. So in a way, you can just come to someone and say, hey, like your IDE has changed. Like the types of apps that you're building has changed. The way you build software has changed. Like the way you are going to deploy software and monitor it in production is also changing too.
Yeah, I do think there's absolutely an education component to it, to some extent. But yes, at least you're not coming up with something that people can't imagine, right? If it's something brand new, people can't imagine it. It's maybe harder there's even more of an education. But I think people know what observability is. There's people are relatively, in the tech world are more likely. I think this is why Cursor and all those code agent tools have massive adoption. If you're technical, you're more likely to try something new more easily. I think that's pretty common. If you're more technical, it's easier for you to move between different technology type products. But there's certainly an education component of saying like, hey, you got to think about things a little differently because here's a little bit new of a paradigm that you haven't seen before, but this is why you should be thinking about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity involved. I mean, I think back to Cursor and VS Code, and I remember like people were pretty happy with VS Code. Yeah. I thought VS Code was sick. Like it was a really good piece of software. And then someone showed me Cursor, and I was like, oh my God, I could never go back. So I think people may be satisfied with what they have today because it requires a certain amount of creativity to understand what is possible using this new set of technologies.
Yeah.
But like if you have a little bit of vision and taste, you can come and show them what is possible. Yeah. So that's what we're doing.
Dude, taste is everything, huh? Especially in like
I think it kind of comes down to
new
taste.
categories. Yeah. Well, I think the collective skill level though of people is going down just from the get-go, because they're not necessarily caring about observability until maybe they're already in production and something broke, and then they finally have to get into it. But like even for us, like when we teach people about tracing, it's not like they knew, and I thought everyone knew. That was like my bad assumption.
I think this idea, and maybe this is actually a good reason, is that the market is expanding, right? When the idea that everyone can be an engineer, whether you believe it or not today, if you assume it's going to keep getting better, it's not going to get any worse than it is today. Well, then more and more people are going to consider themselves engineers or builders and that can actually build something. Well, more and more of those people are going to get those applications into production and need something to actually monitor and observe because they don't even know they need it yet. But if they do get to production, they will need it. And so there needs to be tools.
if they're AI native, right? In this case, they are. Then them learning Datadog doesn't make any sense, right? It should be something that's in line with the experience that they've gained thus far through like the cursors and the Sherwood's product and ours and everybody.
Yeah, Mushroom's mysterious product. I mean, there
Yeah.
are kind of different personas in a way. Like, I think about this a lot. I think about like how in some cases, in a lot of ways, like I'm building this observability tool for people like myself who have like been a professional developer for like over 10 years and actually started an observability team. So like I know a lot about observability and like I'm familiar with the product category and all of the different tools and how to instrument them. But I'm also building a tool that raises the floor for people who are like building vibe coded apps. You know, you're building on Replit or V0 or Bolt or Lovable, and you have your thing in production now, and it's got users. Maybe it's even got revenue, but you need to make sure that thing is running, and when it breaks, you need to be able to fix it. Um, and you like, I don't think that the answer is to like tell that person to like level up. Like it's a skill issue, bro. Like learn Datadog.
Yeah.
I think the answer is to give them a better tool that
Yeah.
makes observability accessible. And maybe like they don't even need to know it's observability. And maybe that shouldn't be on my website. That's definitely something I'm thinking about. Like how do I build for professional developers who have a lot of experience, but also how do I build for this like growing market of builders who are, you know, not really like engineers. I'm sure you guys have a lot of people coming to Mastra that like want to build agents, you know, and they like haven't built anything before, let alone an agent.
Yeah, and like we're teaching them AI engineering concepts, which are kind of like founded on regular software engineering. You know, so you kind of have to. I feel like education is probably a part of everybody's company now. It's just like a de facto thing of caring about the users, like understanding of what you do.
Yeah, which is why you should watch the AI Agents Hour and also complete the new Mastra 101 course, which Shane worked very hard on.
Yes, yes, exactly. You get it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that you guys do this super well, and other people should take note and try to emulate it.
Yeah, where should we send your sponsorship check to?
Yeah.
Banking details forthcoming.
We did not pay for this endorsement.
No.
I've never run Mastra in production, and Abhi and I were talking about doing a session where like he just teaches me Mastra 101 from the ground up.
Yeah, we should definitely do that cool. as a getting started. You know, let's go from the beginning to deploying an agent in 20 minutes or something. I think we could probably do something like that in the future.
For sure. Yeah.
So, are you happy that you're in SF now and you have a company and you're back on the moves or back on the grind? I mean.
Yeah, man, I'm becoming unemployable. Like, I just love building startups. I guess like to tie things back to 11x and to my first company. I mean, there's so many lessons I learned from that, and probably the most important lesson was to just build something that you resonate with and like align the company to your identity and your interests and passion. Healthcare, like medical billing, was not my passion or area of interest. I think that probably came through in my pitches. It probably came through in my sales calls. Like I had to go to a lot of conferences and wear a lot of button-down shirts, which is just like not me. And I know other people who like thrive in that and like really obsess over the healthcare problem space and like have a network there and really enjoy it. And like this is their raison d'etre, and that's great. But it wasn't the case for me. And now I feel like I'm just building a product for people like me, a product that I wish existed, a company that I think is fucking cool and that I'm super excited about. And like just it's just night and day, like operating when you love it versus when you're kind of lukewarm about it.
Yeah, totally. Dude,
so
amen to that.
Biggest lesson. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What else? Like, I mean, SF is obviously like ripping right now. I think it's a really cool place to be. As an early stage founder, there's no better place in the world to just be a builder. In SF, like the entire ecosystem is designed for people like us. It's kind of like, when you're a founder in New York, it's like being a tall person on an airplane. Like the airplane is just not made for you. Sorry, it was made for like people of 5'8" or whatever, people like me.
People like me. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I have a great time on an airplane because they're built for me. But like
Yeah. Same.
if you're too tall, you're like shit, like everyone's going out all the time, and like people work 9 to 5s, and they have like they're really diverse interests and like lots of hobbies, and there's just there aren't as many investors and aren't as many other builders, and you felt really like your lifestyle is not normalized. And in San Francisco, your lifestyle is extremely normalized as a founder, and the ecosystem is designed to work for you. So that's really awesome. There are trade-offs. I think it was really hard to hire in San Francisco, and it's in part for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because everyone is a founder or wants to be a founder. So like even if you get like a great early team member, they're with you for like a year, they hit their equity cliff, and then they raise and like start something. So I think New York has like a lot of great engineers who don't plan on being founders, and that's really, that's really great if you're hiring.
It's great for you too, because you know them.
That's true. Yeah, I have a solid network out there. We gotta get we'll do AI agents hour live in New York. That'd be pretty cool.
I'm down. I'll be there September 6th.
What's
Partying with
taking
the
you out there?
YC homies. Just visiting some people from our YC batch and grooving.
Nice.
Just chilling.
Nice.
I'll be living the travel lifestyle.
Yeah, because we have to go. Well, we're going to AI engineer Paris, so I figured if I'm getting out of this state, I might as well do some other shit too on the way there. So
Yes. Oh
heading to
man,
New
you
York.
do some intense travel. You went to Japan, right?
Yeah, that was a little too intense. That was a little. That
Yeah.
one was too intense, dude.
Have a
The
long trip.
Mastra community is like there's like this crazy. It's so international that I guess you have to go do it. That seems super
Yeah.
hard.
But the Paris conference will be cool. Like I think just because it's part of the AI series of conferences. Otherwise, I don't think we would have gone, right, Shane? Like,
Yeah. I mean, it just we have some team members over in Europe. It made a lot of sense for us to be there, and yeah, it's kind of like a mini Mastra gathering of sorts.
Mhm.
yeah.
Are you guys going to talk there?
No, just going.
No. Yeah. Just flying in to creative books.
I got waitlisted, so I'll be honest about that. I just got waitlisted, so
Oh
probably
shit,
not
man.
gonna get it. It's okay.
So we'll call
They
some
hurt my
out right
feelings,
now.
but it's okay.
Yeah,
I
someone.
don't actually know if
Go
I
ahead.
don't know if he's running it. I don't know if he's if he and Ben are running the Paris one, or if they've got a partner out there who runs it. But
I think some French dudes are running it. They seem pretty nice. They gave me a free ticket though, so it's the least they could do, I guess, for waitlisting your boy.
what's
thanks Sherwood for coming, dude. We have to get into the news soon, but
yeah, but
dude, when you launch, come back and we gotta talk about the product
of
and do a
course,
walkthrough.
yeah, of course, yeah. I'll be super excited to share it with everyone. And like, let's do that. Let's do the Master 101. thing.
Yes.
We can do that off cycle. But
yeah,
thank you
yeah,
guys for having me
I'll
on.
hit you up.
yeah,
Of course, dude, anytime.
Yeah, bring you on in a couple weeks, and we'll talk you through the beginnings of Mastra, and you'll see it all.
Let's go. All right, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Cool.
Yeah, good to
See
talk,
ya.
Sherwood. All right.
Yeah, I don't think I do most. Like, I didn't know a lot of that part of the story. And I've met Sherwood many times.
Yeah, I
But
learned a lot.
we got it all out. That's
For
awesome.
those of you that are tuning in, we did some Mastra updates at the beginning. We talked with Richard from Naptha AI and learned about some of the things that he is working on that you can check out. Wizardkit.ai was one of them. We talked with Sherwood and learned a lot about Sherwood's story, which is, I think, it's kind of like a cautionary but educational tale, right? It's like that, it's like a continuation on, this stuff isn't easy, but also like this is kind of a great time to be a founder, I think. And honestly, even if you're not a founder, if you're just building in AI in general, if you're watching this, it's a great time to be an engineer or in tech in general. I think it's so, I don't know. I appreciated his like optimism towards like why he wants to be an SF and wants to build things. And I think no matter where you are, if you're not an SF, you are an SF, it doesn't matter. If you're building in AI, I think you are onto something that is likely going to lead to good things professionally. That's my take.
That's a fortunate thing about SF, at least for the friendships and network that we made is like everyone's so truly passionate about what they do, and we're so passionate about what we do. It's like a kind of like a nice, it's just like a nice like being colleagues with people like that. We're also not friends with the people who aren't passionate about what they do. So it just goes to show you, if you want to be friends with the monsters, you gotta like what you do.
Yeah. You better be opinionated and passionate. You need a little of both.
Both of those things for sure.
All right, dude. Should we get into some news?
Let's do it.
We're going to try to get through a lot of this. There is a lot here. I think the first thing, which was a funny article that came out last week, which I think is actually a good thing for us personally. And if you're watching this or listening to this, I think it should be a wake up call in some ways. And maybe I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by it, to be honest. But there was an MIT report, and this was in an article on Fortune, that said 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. So, you got to pay for Fortune. So I read like a summary of the article. I didn't read the actual article, but I think there's a lot of lessons that people, if you're building an AI, can learn. And the first is that this stuff is very hard and people are still figuring it out. The second is, 95% of projects or pilots have maybe failed, but a lot of those pilots probably started 6 to 12 months ago, and the tools are getting better. So I think that number is going to keep decreasing. Like that's my personal, optimism and bias, of course. But I do think that there are things that if you want projects to succeed, you have to do. And it's the things we talk about all the time. Evals. You got to spend more time on evals than you probably think. Like that's important. If you don't have those, your pilot's probably not going to be successful.
Yeah, I think like Sam, you and me were chatting about this article on our like a car ride home, and it really like evolved into us thinking like, what are all the things we're seeing out in the wild, and how is it like, what are the people doing that's the 95% winners, and what are the people that are the 5% doers of people like doing? And we kind of made some like archetypes, right? Like the 95% winners, sorry, there's only 5% winning, sorry.
Yeah.
95% losers, 5% winners. So of the 5% winners that we at least see, they are writing evals, right? They're writing evals, but also their project is very scoped. Because they're like experimenting with AI in like nice scope projects that probably the team realizes is possible.
Yes, if you're building a project where you are just having to hope that the models get better for your project to be successful, that is a project that's probably doomed to fail. You need to be realistic with what these models can actually do. And I think one of the challenges is you get executives, and I'm definitely painting with a wide brush here, a broad brush. But you get these executives that see how someone can vibe code an app and release it into production and make all this money. And that's like someone winning the lottery. Like, yes, it exists, but it's very rare. But that executive sees that and says, we need AI. We need it to be that powerful. And so they come up with this vision of what AI can do that isn't grounded in everyday reality, right? It's like you didn't see the 999 apps that didn't make it to production. You saw the one that did. And so it definitely biases, I think. And so when everyone needs to show that they're building an AI, because every big company needs to have some kind of AI story.
Yeah.
They're going to set the standards that maybe are not attainable. So if you're an engineer, you need to be knowledgeable enough to show them what is attainable. And so you can set the scope at the beginning, because otherwise the odds are not in your favor.
And setting small scope isn't bad, because you could iterate quickly and then do the next part of the project, right? You just keep growing the scope after. But we see people that are like, oh yeah, we're going to do this platform. I'm just going to, randomly, we're going to do this platform. That's what we're doing. I'm like, okay, how does it work? They're like, we don't know yet, but we're going to use AI. And we're like, all right.
And it's going to take us 6 to 12 months. And you're like, okay. If you have a project that's going to take you a year to get it into production, it's not going to work. I mean, because everything's going to be different. If you went back a year ago and you look at now, a lot of things have changed. So in order, and maybe things are slowing down, like I think they maybe are, but you need to scope it in a way that you can get it in the hands of people sooner. And I think this is common knowledge in a lot of engineering projects, but I think it's even more important when the technology underneath you is still changing, is scope something small that you can get in the hands of users and you can validate if it actually works, and then build on it, or throw it out. But at least you didn't invest 6 months. You invested. It's like if you told me that if you could guarantee 95% of the projects that the pilots I do are going to fail, well, then I want to have 20 pilots, because then I'll find the one that's going to succeed. And the only way to have 20 pilots is to scope small.
Also, articles like this cause FOMO and stuff and FUD. And it's kind of unfortunate, but maybe it'll wake people up, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that, generates a lot of people saying, oh, AI is overhyped. It's not going to actually provide the value. This is proof. And then on the other hand, you see people, like us that are already bought in that say, well, let's talk about the actual projects that are working and figure out how do we get more of those projects so that number isn't 95% and it's, 50%. I also wonder, like, if you talked about how many technology projects actually succeed, it's probably not that, it's probably a kind of a low percentage.
It's probably not that off, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they say like 80% of startups fail in 5 years or something, so 95%, it's,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But then usually when you say the word pilot, it's like someone sold something to a big company. At least that's how it feels to me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue on. We had a lot to go. We got a lot to go through. So let's talk about Anthropic. So first, Anthropic's in talks to raise apparently $10 billion in new funding. So they're raising some money.
Crap.
So that's a lot. They've also released new admin controls for business plans, which basically kind of combines the coding agent and the app in one subscription. I think they're still trying to figure out how to bill for Claude Code. I think they realized maybe they didn't expect Claude Code to be as popular, and now they're trying to figure out how do we make Claude Code get kind of pulled into the rest of the product. So I think that's what this is mostly about. It's probably a good move. I think ultimately people want free Claude Code. They can't give it free forever, so they need to try to figure out how do they bundle it. And this is just bundling.
Mm-hmm. It's another packaging issue.
Pricing and packaging.
Pricing and packaging.
So there is some updates from OpenAI. So we'll shift over and talk about OpenAI. They had updates to the Responses API. This was last week. They have connectors. So within the API, you can actually pull context from Gmail, Google Calendar, Dropbox through the API, not just in ChatGPT, but actually through the API itself, which is pretty interesting. And on top of that, they have conversations, which is basically like memory built into your API calls. So you don't have to own the database. It's just, I'm assuming through however you authenticate that API call. So I thought this was, pretty interesting. What do you think?
It's pretty interesting because OpenAI wants to take over the world. They gotta do it's one thing at a time.
Yeah, I mean, it is just they're trying to expand the influence of what they can do, right? So this is obviously competing with memory providers. It's competing with people that are doing integrations and MCP and all that. I do think, it's one of those that honestly, I just feel more and more like Apple's the walled garden. OpenAI. I even messed up the name. OpenAI is Apple, which is like the walled garden. It's like OpenAI is trying to be Apple. Like, you just have everything, which is cool. I just think that, it's also kind of locks you into doing things in a very certain way.
But I wonder what connectors are probably their own integration pattern than MCP. So, but then it's built into the API, which is like a really nice touch, right? Because you get those tools for free.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't have to worry about how the connector was used as long as they support the connector.
Yeah.
And maintain
and conversation. Like they already did. I felt like they already had conversation persistence, right? But now there's an API around it. So that's interesting. There'll probably be memory primitives and everything like that. They're trying to drink everyone's milkshake.
Yeah. And they are apparently arranging a secondary stock sale of $6 billion, according to, some sources that would put the company's valuation at $500 billion. So their employees about to get paid potentially.
They're about to get Paid. That's cool.
This one, let's keep talking about OpenAI. So OpenAI released agents.md, or started promoting it at least. The first time I saw it was last week. And this is a real problem, but I kind of laugh that I don't know if this is the actual solution or not, because I've seen 10 different
A lot
people
of
try to
these.
solve this. But this one actually has the backing of OpenAI. It's basically like a README for agents. The goal is so you don't have to have like a Claude file and cursor rules and all these different files in your code base. You can have a single one, and then all the agents should adopt this.
Yeah. Agents MD, I remember we saw it first in Codex when we were playing with Codex back in the day. But dude, and this is yet it's just another markdown standard.
I kind of feel like my hot take is, first of all, I don't know if it's going to work. It might actually work. They actually have some credibility, so they might be able to convince enough of the coding agents to support it. And so maybe
Yeah.
they can actually they're probably one of the only few that if it's going to work, it's going to have to be a big player. But I feel like they were just jealous that Anthropic got MCP, and they're like, we got to get something.
Yeah.
Google has A to A, which you can say what you want about that. Anthropic's got MCP. We need agents.md. We need something. We need some kind of standard or spec that we can own. Besides, of course, like the actual, completions API, in which, not everyone supports, but a lot of people do.
When we were meeting with or chatting with the OpenAI folks on Codex, they did mention that everyone internally, or I don't want to say everyone, but they heavily use Agents MD with Codex internally, and and they had like a lot of good things to say. So, but then like, this is just funny because like last week there was like an open source project that allows you to like translate and transform from one format to all the formats. So you can like have like one format to rule them all, which will work in each thing. And it's just like, yeah, this is yet another one. So that's cool.
Yeah. How does the other one work? Does it just like compile? Like you just commit the one
Compiles it.
file, and then it's like
Yeah.
when you clone, it's like a post clone. It just creates the other files for you and keeps it up to date or something.
Yeah, it's pretty much like yeah, you pretty much got it.
Okay. Well, I just architected that thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is one that's not really news, but I saw it and I thought it was kind of cool. So maybe if you're looking for, you want to see how AI is progressing, you can go to progress.openai.com. And the thing that's kind of nice about it is it gives you a bunch of different prompts you can click through, and it tells you what answer you would get between GPT-1, GPT-2, Text DaVinci, which if you don't know what Text DaVinci is, you haven't been building in this very long. So
Yeah.
like, that's when this is when I joined, like when I was first hitting the API. But then you can basically see all the way through, today, GPT-5. So you can see different prompts and like how each model would respond, which is kind of interesting because you can actually see quite a bit of progress in not really that much time, if you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 years feels like a long time, but pretty significant progress has been attained. Obviously, a lot more since like 2021 to 2025 was really the biggest jump. So play around with it. It's kind of cool.
Very cool.
All right, we're done with OpenAI. So this one we can just casually mention because I don't know much about it, but apparently Midjourney and Meta have a partnership, or they're at least in talks, where they're going to try to license some of Midjourney's tech for future Meta projects. So I think for Midjourney, I think it's kind of interesting too, because Midjourney was very hot for quite a while. And I think a lot of what they did, maybe because the interface was through Discord for the longest time, but a lot of what they did seemed to get kind of just eaten up by the rest of the models, which happens to a lot of companies. We kind of already joked about it, right? The model companies are probably coming for a lot of ideas around what they already do. And image generation made sense. But I do think that Midjourney does have kind of some distinct stylistic elements, and maybe Meta has just decided that they can't win in image gen and, and all the other things. And so it's better just to license someone that already has a pretty good product and just use that.
Yeah. Just yet another like the, Facebook doing the restructuring and stuff. Like this just seems like another negative towards the goal of restructuring. Just like more shit to deal with, But hey, we'll see. I think it's probably not going to be anything big.
Yeah, we will see. So this one I have strong feelings about. There's an article that says Apple is in talks to use Google's Gemini AI to power a revamped Siri. Okay, so
Okay.
one, is Apple throwing in the towel on AI? Two, like how does Apple feel about like Google being the the AI in their device and probably the AI on a lot of Android
The
devices as well,
phones,
right?
yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think Apple, man, I wish I knew what's going on under the hood there. Because, like, Siri sucks. Like, it's probably the worst. Like, talking to ChatGPT, voice is way better than Siri. Except ChatGPT can't do any of my Apple actions on my iPhone, which seems like a big fuck up when you're a developer. Like, you're all developers use Macs and Apple products, yet we don't have this one feature that we get in our actual app, like the OpenAI app. It is weird. And another thing is, I thought they had an OpenAI partnership. Where'd that go? That shit sucks too. So maybe if Gemini will be better, I guess that's good, but it doesn't seem on brand for Apple. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, I feel like maybe, because Google is the default search provider on iPhones, right? You use
Is it?
Yeah, and
I thought it was Safari.
No, well, the actual for search, I'm pretty sure it goes through Google, and
Oh, the actual like the actual like thing, yeah.
Google pays Apple. I don't know what it is. Someone in the chat, if you know, is like billions of dollars a year. It's a significant amount of money to be the default search provider on all iPhone devices because Google wants to own search, so they pay for that, and they know they make a lot of money from the users that are using their search. So they'll pay Apple a lot of money. I wonder if Google is kind of doing the same thing here where, Apple's like, well, we can't win in AI, but at least we can make a lot of money on the device distribution. So someone that is winning in AI can just pay us to be the default AI provider for Siri. Then Siri is just like the name, and it's like uses Gemini.
The brand.
It's like Siri powered by Gemini or whatever, and then if they want more money, it can eventually be Siri powered by OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever they, I don't know.
Dang. So like as a user, I don't even care if it's like Siri or not. I just want it to work.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people. That's probably why Apple is probably saying like maybe they're still working on it, but they're throwing the towel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin says, and I didn't know the amount. I don't know. I think it's way more than $1 billion, but I don't know. But yeah, pay like $1 billion to be the default search engine. And then I agree. Siri is bad. So
so bad.
Make it better and do what you have to do. Because clearly you haven't made it better yet. I mean, Apple Intelligence that was a joke. That was a marketing. This is marketing, right?
There's nothing intelligent about it, to be honest.
No, it's pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
All right. But speaking of Apple, XAI, and we talked about this before, but XAI is actually suing Apple, apparently. And they're Elon is accusing them of colluding to suppress competition in AI apps. So they apparently did just announce this lawsuit today. So this is like fresh news. But we talked about it, I think, last week, and then
the drama
between Elon and Sam Altman, where Sam Altman said it was a skill issue and all that stuff. But XAI must think they have a case here, so we will see. But I'm sure it'll play out in courts, and we may never hear about it again, or it will take a very long time. But it's obviously happening. So another interesting XAI related post. So XAI opens Grok 2. The weights are on Hugging Face now. So Grok 2.5.
That's cool.
And there was Elon Musk did say that Grok 3, in quotes, will be open source in about 6 months. I don't know if I believe the time frame, but
it's like a year.
So double it. That's
Double it,
my
at least.
engineering management trick. Whatever timeline you get, at least double it.
Well, when was the
But
Cybertruck supposed to come out? Let's just use that as a proxy. Like,
okay, it's like if I ask a normal engineer, it's like I double their estimate. If I ask Elon Musk, I triple or quadruple the
triple it.
estimate. So maybe 18 months. But anyways, so it's still, I think it is cool though that more open weight models are coming out. That's a good thing, especially if you're, if you want to run some of these open models yourself, if you want to, compare and contrast and be able to run your own inference. I think it's good. I'm a fan of more open models,
Yeah, me too.
even if I don't use them that much. I just want to know. I almost just want to know they're there. It's like gives me comfort that I could run this stuff if I had to. If I really needed a cost save, I wanted to do fine tuning. I haven't really done it a lot. I imagine most people aren't, but I do think that people want to know that there's like open competition and the open models are still relatively competitive.
Yeah, and then also inspires people building an open source. They can look at the code for inspiration and try to do their own thing.
Yeah. And speaking of open models, DeepSeek 3.1 was released. So
that's pretty big.
Yeah, and it says, it's our first step toward the agent era. So it has one model, two modes, think and non-think. So that's kind of like GPT-5.
Yeah.
Think reaches answers in less time than DeepSeek R1, stronger agent skills. So it's better at multi-step agent tasks. And then you can try it out on, chat.deepseek.com, or obviously, you should be able to run it yourself, I imagine, probably in LM Studio. So
like the agent era though, what does that even mean?
I don't know.
Is this a release this is like one of those releases that is building upon something for the future, maybe? I guess that's what the agent era is coming.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, Tyler from the Mastra team had speculated that it might be a precursor to like their new R2 architecture. So they, based on some of the reception around it, was, it was kind of mixed, but that the architecture is maybe a little bit different. So it might be leading to what they're trying out or what they're moving towards. And so they kind of merged their chat and reasoning models into one model. And so it's like kind of like the first version, which is similar to what GPT-5 did, right? It's like you just have one, and ideally the model chooses if it needs to think deeply or not. I think that, that's probably what people want, with the idea that they can tune some knobs or dials if they need to, but overall they want it just to figure it out.
Yeah, maybe and maybe this is true or not, but like maybe reasoning models themselves were just like a point in time, and then that's more of like going to be folded into model architecture. Because like do people use DeepSeek for regular chat or only R1 for reasoning? Like if you're using it.
Well, I mean, I think from what I've heard, most people used it because it was a good reasoning model, right? That's I would imagine what most of their usage is. But I think this is actually a trend in that ideally you don't need to make these decisions, because I would say the same thing could be true of like even like re-ranking models. Everyone was like really big on re-ranking models if you're doing RAG, and I still think they're valuable today. But also, a lot of people are just using just general LLMs to do re-ranking. You don't even need a specialized model. And so if you think about it, why can't the one API decide, okay, you want a re-ranking task, use a specialized re-ranking model, and it just routes for you rather than you having to specify. And same thing with thinking, reasoning or not. Shouldn't the LLM decide? If I ask you to build a research paper, well, you probably need to do some pretty deep thinking on that. If I ask you what 2 + 2 is, you don't need to think very long about that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's kind of like an agent network, but like the model itself is like routing within it. So that's probably how the architecture will change, especially after GPT-5. Like probably be more like that mixed model architecture. We should probably, with that being said, we should probably get Professor Andy back on the show and probably teach us what that even means. So that's
we act like we're the experts. We're figuring this stuff out too. But Andy knows. He'll teach us.
Andy knows.
So yes, we should bring Andy on. In additional open source news, so Qwen Image Edit is the new open weights leader in image editing. So apparently the quality is comparable to GPT 4.0 for image editing tasks. And so this is kind of, it's Apache 2.0 license. The weights are available in Hugging Face. And I've seen it, kind of compared to Flux.1 context as well. And it seems to be better than that. But it's good to have more open models. I can show some examples of, here's the original, add a design to the mug. As you can see, that's pretty cool that you
Very
can just
nice.
have it. You can see the different versions of Quen versus Flux versus GPT 4.0, which of course these are like cherry picked examples, right? But it's just cool that you could do this. Like, look at this. Like, why do they like, look at this one. What's going on here? And why does she go from like relatively like neutral to sad in all these images?
Maybe GPT-4 is a default depressing.
Yeah, I guess it asked. Turn the
it said
facial
to
expression to sad. Okay, now I feel better about it. So it changed the facial expression and changed the instrument, so those are obviously better than that. Yeah.
That's dope.
Change a strawberry into a blueberry, just turns it blue. That's funny. Anyways, image editing's fun, but it's good to have more open models that can do that. All right, now we got a whole bunch of other news. So this one is from Klein. And for those of you, if you're looking for a good article to read that just kind of talks about some general lessons on, context windows and building. Again, we mentioned previously that last week we had a context engineering meetup at the YC office where our co-founder Sam was talking. But I think more and more when I've been talking to people, a lot of people are like, well, the context windows are big enough. Does that mean we don't need RAG? We don't need any of these other, tools? And the answer still is no. Like, bigger context windows are good for certain things, but they don't necessarily solve all your problems. You can't just shove a bunch of nonsense into the context and hope for the best. So I think that's why context engineering in general has kind of become a hot topic. But Klein has this thing called focus chain, which they talk through, a little bit more details on how, even though you have bigger context windows, you have some of the same memory issues and some of the same context drift and context rot and all these terms that are popping up. But essentially, there's a new feature that tries to tackle this on. It's a context forward approach to task orientation. So it's kind of seems like almost like a task manager of sort, like a planning tool. But it's a useful article if you're just looking to dig into a little bit more on how Klein is approaching this problem. And maybe if you're going through similar problems, you might have ideas on how to improve your agents as well.
Feels like context is like this area where like the message history and the messages and the content and everything is actually not, it's like separate from the context and you're injecting into it. So even if you had a million token count window, like, it doesn't mean that you should use all 1,000,000 tokens to achieve a task, right? You still would want to be like cognizant of what the prompt is and what the context given to the prompt is, and then is that enough? Where do you think do you think that, what's the use case for what would someone do with the 1,000,000 context window on day one? Are they going back into RAG and removing some things, or what do you think?
So why would people actually use a 1,000,000 context window?
Yeah, I'm trying to wonder why.
I think there are problems. So what all the models companies, what they all benchmark against is that you can basically do needle in the haystack. So you can fill up a 1,000,000 token context and you can say, what was this one specific thing that was mentioned in that context? And in that is kind of like a regex of sorts. Like, all the models now can do really good on large contexts, like picking out, when did I ask, what was the date of my anniversary? Well, if I mention that exactly one time, it can go through and it can pick that out, right? Like, that's something that that the models do relatively well, but there's way more to that. So if you think about how to piece multiple pieces together from that context in interesting ways, now that has to reason across all that context and make those those inferences and kind of those connections, where if you could just give it all the times I mentioned something similar to that and compress that context, now the model has a lot easier time like connecting those things.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't think I think a lot of people will shove like huge context and just see what the models can do. But unless you're doing a very simple task like that, filling up the context window, I don't think is going to work very well.
Yeah. Because like coding agents are the ones that I would say you could easily fill that window up, right, with files. Because like, some people got big ass files, and that it's kind of sad that even with the context window, you still need some more paradigms for operating on a large code base, etc.
Yeah, well, all the coding agents now basically just use like a grep-like tool.
Grep, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no, I think filling the context up with a lot of code doesn't seem to be the right pattern. At least not, that's not the pattern that's working today.
Yeah, maybe they're like, well, you can see like when cursor is like thinking, it's like it's traversing of many paths in the code base, and then the summary of those is the context window that it'll then use for what I asked it to do. Which is very it's intelligent in terms of it probably is doing some retrieval on what's happened in the thread and all that type of stuff. So pretty much everything we do at Mastra, actually. So good for us.
So continuing on, Cohere has released Command A Reasoning, which is enterprise grade control for AI agents. It's essentially a model that you can deploy and use. It's just interesting that, Cohere has a bunch of like re-ranking models and such, but this is just a general reasoning model. So haven't used it, don't know much about it, but it obviously has some benchmarks against some other deep research. Specifically, Cohere is very enterprise focused. So they're trying to say, this is a better reasoning model specifically for enterprise use cases. Yeah.
This is weird. It's like opposite of what we're seeing in the other one, where they're making specific reasoning model versus like undoing that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what ends up winning out.
Yeah.
So this one is an interesting one because I think it's like a precursor to what I think we're going to see more of. So I'm not even that interested specifically I'm never going to try this out, right? But Deal launches an AI workforce. But I do think that more of these companies are going to launch tools to basically build your own helpers or agents in their platform, right? So this essentially allows you to turn on or build AI agents around, I'm assuming, your specific needs. So you need help hiring or need help managing time off. I mean, these names I think are kind of ridiculous. But,
yeah.
Okay.
The
Time
border
off fairy,
buddy.
Border buddy, schedule sheriff, goodbye genie. I mean, they're just trying to play off some, I guess,
That's
cutesy
some
names.
cringe.
Yeah, that's super cringe. But it has like specialized AI agents that you can essentially turn on or, quote unquote, hire for your team, right? And I imagine you pay them based on tasks or whatever. But I do think we'll see more of this kind of thing. Maybe with some better naming conventions. But I do think that like this is just a precursor to what I think we're going to see. So Deal is kind of early in this.
Will Deal have an AI for being a spy? Maybe. Like, you think they'll have one for that?
I don't know. I don't see
the slick spy.
Slick spy.
They're the company with the spies, right? I was just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I think I remember hearing that. Yeah. So I don't know. They did that one. That one was on the list. It didn't make the cut. They like you pick 7. That was number 8. It didn't quite make it.
I do think HR companies will all follow suit too if that thing takes off. Even Salesforce is gonna have like these specialized agent products. It's interesting that they like verbiage is like hire them, makes it more human.
Well, it makes it more. I think if they convince you that you're hiring them or that you're rather than just like a feature you turn on, it makes it feel like you're comparing that to if I had to hire a person for that same job, which we know that agent isn't going to completely solve the same thing, right? But it'll solve maybe a subset of that person's task. So if you could say like, I normally would hire 3 people, but I could actually hire 2 and give them this tool and it makes them more efficient. Well, then I save myself one whole person. So I can compare it to that salary because now my
Oh.
team can be significantly more efficient with less resources.
I wonder if they all have like personas too. Like the payroll detective is like an asshole.
Yeah, it's like it's like you have like the financial ones are gonna have like some auditor, which the auditor is
Yeah.
always gonna be a pain in your ass.
Pain in the ass, just
Yeah.
checking like the pedanticness of everything.
Yeah, like this is you did not fill out this expense report correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine that they will just because they'll try to make it more, yeah, like an
HR
agent.
friendly.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
want to make it more HR friendly, like an agent. I honestly think that over time, maybe they won't, and it'll go back to just like providing the tools for the person that's doing the job. I think it's actually like it's like marketing to make it more feel like a person right now. A lot of tools, like
Yeah.
we just had Sherwood on, right? Like that they have the Alice, which is like an SDR. I think that giving it a persona is going to be useful for a point in time, but my hunch would maybe say that long term, it's like you're just going to roll these things into like one global agent that maybe has some kind of persona, or just like they're just become features of a product that you don't need specific persona for. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Hopefully no one falls in love with the border buddy or whatever.
Yeah, and then they upgrade the border buddies model, and it's like, oh no, you've changed.
You
Oh, why have
changed.
you changed?
You're not my boyfriend anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Why have you changed? Something caused you to change. Yeah, that's. I mean, we joke, but it's a real concern.
It's
It's kind of
real.
sad. But the show must go on. This one was not recently released, but I thought it was kind of cool. So Hugging Face has introduced AI sheets. This was a while back, but we never talked about it yet. So I think I've just been seeing more and more people trying to figure out ways to curate data. So this is trying to provide you tools to do better data labeling, data curation with using open models as like helpers for that. So that's kind of cool. I think more and more people, it's going to be the quality of your data and your data sets. We talk about the eval loop, and this, may be a tool that fits into your eval loop in some way.
The data set problem is solved in all these like LLM ops companies and stuff, but even Hamel's like you just need like a simple tool, and this is pretty cool. Plus you can export it too, which is dope.
Yeah, I think it just provides you the kind of a way to start to interact and trying to curate the data, and then provide you little tools to make that a little bit better. You don't need it, of course. I think you could build it yourself. I think
Right.
Mastra is going to have helpers to help you do that. A lot of the other observability providers will have helpers, but it's just another potential tool for the the tool belt.
Yeah, it's because like Big Eval wants you to use the whole platform, right? And to get like a data set feature that's like a spreadsheet essentially, you have to have everything else too, and then it all wired up. But like obviously Hugging Face is like the NPM kind of this world, right? It's like very like they have swag, and so they're just like, no, you need this.
Yeah, and it's meant to feel more open, right? So it feels like you're not locked into a certain tool provider. It's works with open models. So I think that's the idea, is it's just a little bit more of an open tool. All right, and this last one is just an interesting article, interesting thing that we can talk about to end on today, which is there was an article in the New Stack, and I think we've talked about things like this before, but there's the statement of AI agents are the new APIs. So it's basically the idea. I just think, the article is interesting, of course, but I think that's the headline, right? Is like, are AI agents the new APIs? Rather than, having your code talk to specifically an API, are you going to have, your agent talk to another agent rather than an API in the middle? So.
Oh, that's interesting. So like there are no tool calls, they're just other agents who know how to do that, or someone who owns that tool or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think there's the idea that, you could argue, is MCP the new API? Maybe.
Maybe.
But if you put a layer on top of MCP, are agents going to be the new API? I don't know. Not today, but
yeah. No, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've yet to see anyone replace an API with an agent though. yet. I think it costs so much money.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
in the grand scheme of things.
yeah, you have to kind of think about what's the use case where you'd actually think that would work, right? If it's deterministic, why do you need an agent? But
Yeah.
I could see there being endpoints that are, a little bit more like a natural. I think I had a blog post at one point that APIs should have a natural language endpoint. So,
Mhm.
It knows what you have access to. You can actually just ask it to do the things that you would normally use the API for. And then you don't have to, if you want to integrate your app into that API, you just know that there's a natural language endpoint and it can do most of the things pretty well. Like assuming that the model that's behind that endpoint is good. Now your app can just kind of like ask questions and it will not have to inspect the API or make deterministic routes for how to handle those different things. So it leaves it up to the API to decide. And I think MCP then came out and helped standardize. Well, no, like the MCP is kind of the replacement for the API, and your agent can just consume that and know how to work with it. So it's kind of solved some of the same things. But yeah, I don't know that there's like a really good like agent that's replaced an API that I'm aware of.
Yeah, at least not yet, because mostly people are still building like co-pilots and chat-based things. Where, I mean, I could see definitely a future where you call it an API, but under the hood it just does a bunch of like agentic execution over like 1,000 things, and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
And that's still an API though, even though there's an agent. So I guess it's true. Agents are APIs and APIs
I
are
mean,
agents.
yeah, if you deploy a Mastra project, every agent has an API. So I mean,
Yeah, that's true because we already think this way. So
yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's just kind of, yes, it's supported. I don't think it's going to replace existing APIs. I think your agents that you build may interact with those existing APIs, potentially through MCP or potentially just consuming the API through tool calls, right?
Yeah.
But all right, dude, that was a show.
That was a show, dude. Ooh, there's a lot of news, and lots of things are happening, which is great.
Yeah, had some good guests.
Yeah, great guests. Fun times.
Yeah, we got a starting to cook up a pretty good show for next week, so I'm excited about that. Oh, for those of you watching, we're not going to be doing it on Monday next week. We're here Monday noon, almost every week. It's a holiday. We decided we're gonna do the show on Tuesday, so you'll still see us. It'll be Tuesday next
Yeah.
week. So just if you're sad that you didn't get to see us on Monday afternoon, just know you only have to wait 24 hours, and
Exactly.
we'll still be in your on your computer screen or in your earbuds or whatever you're listening to. And that reminds me, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. If you are not watching it on YouTube, if you're watching it on Spotify, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you're watching on X, please give us a rating, assuming it's 5 stars. We appreciate that. And like, subscribe, do all the things that everyone always says that we have to, we have an obligation to say to you. So please help us out. Please share the show.
We're trying to get big on YouTube. We're publishing great content there. So your subscribe is not only for this show, but for all other educational things that we do. So please, do that whole thing.
And check out some of those videos. Alex has been on fire.
Killing it. Even that heads up game thing I saw, that was pretty tight. There's so much good content. We're trying to get better at it too. So check it out.
Ultimately, we are all the admirals of AI, right? We're trying to teach people what we're learning along the way, and so hopefully you can get some value from that.
Yeah. What else should we plug before we go? We have TypeScript conference.
Oh,
I guess
tsconf.ai. Let's drop that in we need a TypeScript AI conference. Yes. So go to tsconf.ai. We're not selling, so you can't actually register yet. Just put in your email so you get notified when the registration happens, because I'm pretty sure, and this is public, but don't quote me on this, everybody, but I'm pretty sure the way we're going to do it is there's a set number of early bird tickets. And so if you are on the list, you're going to get an email when it goes live. You can get one of the cheaper early bird tickets. And once those first set of tickets are gone, then it goes to the full price. And we only have 300 spots, and we do expect it to sell out. Like,
It will.
yeah, maybe have a room for a little bit of overflow. We'll see, or we're trying to figure that out. But 300 spots in SF. You can obviously, even if you're not in SF, you should go put your email in anyways, because you're going to then get all the information about how to watch it virtually. So even if you can't come to SF, drop in your email. You'll get notified of how you can watch it virtually and attend online. And then if you can get to SF, you know,
come
even
hang out
better.
with us.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have to promote?
I don't know.
You want the book? You can get the book.
Yeah.
That's it.
Get the book. You know, give Mastra a star on GitHub if you haven't already. You know, please do that.
16.1K now. We're on the way to 20. Road to 20 begins.
Let's do it.
Give us some stars. Help us out.
Yeah.
And
All right, dude. Let's call that a show. That was a show.
Let's call it a show. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you.